Introduce him, he will introduce himself. I don't need to tell you what he does, he will tell you himself. Joshua, you're off and running.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Aidan. Yes, so sorry, I didn't my routine, everybody. What a great convention this morning. But a lot of you know that I'm an architect, and what a lot of you might not know is what an architect does, and actually what you should expect from architects. Why are architects so expensive? Because we're trained a certain way. I've spent 13 years training to get to the position I'm now in, where I can walk into a space and visualise it. I can visualise every intervention I'm going to make before I even put pen to paper. And I thought today I would just use this 10 minutes to walk you through what you can expect when either yourself or any referral, any client comes to JNEC Studio. And hopefully by the end is able to unlock the value of your property or land. This is a very nice product I did for the bid director of a prime residential company that I was working for a couple of years ago. So thanks to this extension and some other design interventions, the value of the house went from 480 to 620 grand over a period of 2 years. That was quite cool. But I'll just go on to the next. So, here's me. Yay. And so, I'm an architect by profession, but actually what I am is a creative problem solver. And so, as an architect, I design with purpose. It's funny Toby's mentioned purpose today. Architects are architects because they enjoy what they do. And they're really good at what they do because they enjoy what they do. And actually, they're often looked at as the best at what they do because they enjoy what they do. That's what drives them. Not money, not being the best. It's actually just solving the problems. Because what we're taught at architecture school is not how to design. We're taught how to solve problems. How to understand that to take apart a project, you have to recognise that there are lots of different parts. Which is why they get us designing lots of stupid things at university that you think, when am I ever going to put a theatre on top of a multi-storey car park? Anyway, so I'm an architect, but I'm also a project coordinator. I am like the conductor of an orchestra. I have to make sure that every different stakeholder, plumber, electrician, project managers, quantity surveyors, builders, client, are all in the right places. Because if anything goes wrong, everyone's going to sue the guy who's got enough PI, and that's me. So, I've got to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. But I'm also a strategist. I help my clients make sure that they choose the right process for their project. Because you don't just come to an architect for drawings. You come to an architect for their ability to connect the dots, to recognise that if you want to create this seemingly insignificant hole in the wall, that's going to impact where the electrician can run their cables. That's going to impact where the plumber. Oh, hang on. Hello, what's going on? For some reason. Anyway, that's going to impact where the plumber can put the radiators, etc., etc. There's a bit of a blur just to explain, but that's the boring bit. You guys want to see some drawing of my I will tell the process. Here's me. I do love a bit of hand drawing, but I often don't have time to do this on every project. But in essence, there are 4 stages to every project. The feasibility stage, we're basically working out, is your project feasible? Is it even worth spending all this money? Can you really get this flow that you want in your home? Etc., etc. Preliminary sketch options, that's when I'm giving you design options and looking at, we're just exploring. It's like a discovery call, but there's so much more to it in that. We're actually producing drawings, we're producing ideas. And before then progressing on to your develop, design, planning information stage, let's make sure that what you want to do actually is permitted. Let's make sure that you're going to get planned room for it. And then moving on to technical design, where we look at actually how we're going to put this building together. And I've rushed through that because I've got a breakdown of each stage with examples and drawings. So here's a project from Writtle, the house on Lodge Road. And for this stage, we're simply just showing you what currently exists. Because how often do you walk around your house and look at every elevation? So an elevation is just the face. So you've got the front of the property, the rear, and then the sides. How often do you get the chance to see your whole house on one sheet of paper so that you can actually appreciate the different constraints that might exist for extending? So the feasibility stage allowed us to do that because we'll do a hand-drawn survey of the property to produce this. So it takes me around 2 to 3 hours to go around the property, take measurements. I use a tape measure. I use a laser. I don't use all the fancy technology that's out there because I use the main survey stage as a chance to get to know your property. It helps me understand where are the awkward junctions, where are the 85-degree angles, because there's no 90-degree angle with a property, because that would rely on the person laying the bricks to get them absolutely perfect, and then the plasterer to plaster with a tolerance of like 0.5 millimeters, which is impossible. So, and the tolerance in construction is 5 millimeters, so things are always out. And so yeah, feasibility stage consists of a list, consultation, home survey, this drawing, but still, this is the boring bit. This is what exists. We want to see what can be. So, we move on to the preliminary sketch. This top product is a feasibility and sketch stage I did for a medical manufacturing company in Southminster. They wanted a new 500 square metre warehouse, and so we decided that 3D models were going to be the best way to help them understand what potentially they could build. Then this is for a lovely contractor in Colchester who wanted to extend his property. And the power of this stage is it allows us to just explore, like I was saying, what's possible, what's maybe not, before you commit to anything. Because I think a lot of people don't understand floor plans. In fact, even some architects I don't think understand the plans they draw for them. And myself included, so I like to draw something and I think this is going to work. Look at the plan, it's like, hold on. Actually, that doesn't work. So 3D models are really good because it's the way of building before someone actually puts a shovel in the ground. So with this stage, we've got these type of 3D drawings that are produced. And then you've also got, and sometimes we're just doing internal work. So because communication is so important than what I do, I'm always looking at different ways to present ideas. So with this one, I've created a 3D model for my client. I've then used red as a way to show them the way I'm going to remodel. And then I've put my model in what I call X-ray mode. So they can see through the existing walls and they can see clearly. So with this project, I had to reposition the staircase and I had to turn part of the garage into like a foyer to bring more, to create a very open entrance in what was a really dark, hokey mid-terrace townhouse. With St Albans, a lovely project. For this client, they just wanted like a study on the end of their property. And then this client, this was a really cool project, so they were really into sailing. And so I created a very nautical themed extension. So I gave them like a triangular extension with a porthole roof light. So it was like looking up out of a porthole, but actually in the sky. So that was pretty cool. But unfortunately, it never got built because the builder said, "Oh, it's going to be too difficult to build. I'm going to charge you $100,000." So there we go. But I do love builders. A lot of my friends are builders, but it's like anything is possible, provided you've got the right people at the table to actually make it happen. So this is the sketch stage, and then we move into planning. So planning is where we get serious and we say, right, what exactly is this building going to look like? And will the planners actually like it? Because they've got to like it. It's supposed to be an objective process where we just look through the criteria. But I don't need to tell you what planning is like because I feel like a lot. If you've had to work with any councillor You'll understand the plan was like. But anyway, this is for a project at Cambridge where there were a family that were growing and they wanted to make use of space above their garage. So this volume was existing, then I've added an extension over, and then we re-rendered the property so that it ties in, because you don't want it to look like a home has been extended. You want everything to fit seamlessly in, and you want a cohesion design. So I'll give you some more examples of planning. So I've talked a lot about architects basically being the elite, like the SAS of design. And I think one of the reasons why I like blowing the trumpet for architects is because we don't just do the drawings, we also do what they call the design action statement. So that's a report that we produce where we're basically justifying, we're justifying the design. We are telling the planners, look, we've looked at your national planning framework, and here is why you need to accept this, and why you actually don't have a leg to stand on if you're going to try and reject this application. Because, this is how we're going to lay out the site, this is what the building's going to look like, and this report is a way of telling the planners, you asked for this, this and that, well, this is how we're meeting the brief. This is how we're answering the question. And so these reports do take a lot of time because they require flood risk assessment, they require land contamination assessment, etc., etc. There's quite a lot of surveys that we have to produce, and so often when I'm having to quote on a project, I'm having to account for all these surveys that I know the planner's going to ask me for, but as clients, you don't know that. You just think, I want an extension, I want this or that. Surely all I need is a set of drawings, and unfortunately you need more than that. You need all of the extra information that allows the planner to assess whether your project is viable. And so these are just some examples, screen grabs I'm taking. This project is the headquarters that I'm currently doing for a company, so there's a securities company, and we're converting a hay barn, which is 1,000 square feet, no, 10,000 square feet, sorry, 1,000 square meters, into their new headquarters. This project has been ongoing since November last year, and it will probably end up being a 2-year project because of the great local authorities that we're currently working with. I can't name any names, but they're great. And we'll find out a bit about them. But anyway, moving on. Technical design. I'll be very quick because we know that I've taken pleasure. So this stage speaks for itself. This is an example image from a project. So as an architect, I have to think about the consequences of the design that I'm producing for you. I have to think about the fact that because I'm taking out the wall, how I'm going to support the wall above. That's when we bring in someone like Nick, and this is something you'll know, a structural engineer. But as an architect, I have to be able to think about what he is going to design. So I can't just rely on, well, he can just sort that bit out. I'm just going to do all the pretty bits. No, I have to think, no, a steel beam is going to go there, the pillar's going to go there. Are the walls that are the side of that opening actually strong enough to take that steel beam? Because this is just the nature of the architect as problem solver. And so at this stage, we're just showing all the structure, we're showing all the build-ups, we're showing how we meet the fire safety and all that lovely stuff that actually is quite boring, but someone has to do it. Now, stage 5, I didn't mention it at the beginning, because you don't have to have me involved at this stage. And actually, the builder would prefer it if I wasn't involved at this stage, because then I will be the guy who comes every week and says, right, show me how you followed my drawings. And the reason why that's not always great is because with any project, you don't really know what we're dealing with until you start knocking holes in the wall. And I've worked on projects, I've got the chance to work on something on Patson Mount, back when I worked for an architect in Sheffield, and we had a house that had been up for 100 years, and the client wanted to keep quite a lot of it. However, with every wall we took down, we realised that the walls were not sitting on foundations. I don't know what they were. They were just sitting on stacks of bricks that had been configured in a way that worked, but they didn't. They weren't compliant. But anyway, so here's just an example of some construction. So that product I showed you with the X-ray and the remodeling of the stair. This was the staircase design. The client wanted like a really grand way of going upstairs, so we'll just break that. And I'll just move through. And then I've just got this is just an image from a design meeting for the coffee shop. Sorry I can't show you any plans for the coffee shop, but this is just, we're just doubling the size of a coffee shop in Chelmsford, and once it's open, everyone will be able to enjoy what I believe is a wonderful design with a great coffee on the seat. That's why you go there for the coffee. And I've got various sort of internal bonding products. There we go. And that's actually the final, again, going back to that internal remodel I did. Here's like a final image from that project. And this is actually one of Mike Skinner's photos. So he came to that project and took some lovely photos. And it's a great example because there are no windows in that corridor, but because of the way we were able to reconfigure it, we were able to create a feeling of entering a big open ground floor, but in a mid-terrace property. So it was quite a cool thing. And then this is me on site. The client decided to take a picture of me because they were so impressed by my hand drawing skill. I was drawing the elevation of a Georgian property in Wivenhoe, which is a conservation area. And I was employed to get listed building consent or something. And Paul knows about my skills in that area because I've been helping him with records as well. But yeah, that's why? Oh, okay, yeah. So thank you for patiently listening. I feel like I've jumped around a bit. And yeah, hopefully that's a good nutshell of what you can expect from JLC Studio. Thank you.
Very good.
I was curious, just what proportion of your work would you consider to be kind of everyday run-of-the-mill extensions, and what proportion would be radical, out there?
Yeah, pretty very good question. I think 5% is radical. So 5% is the bit that I did at uni in terms of grand projects. And I would then say 60% for me is residential extensions, which can be grand, but in a different way. Because actually, most of us live in a home that's been designed by someone else, which means when we move in, we know that it doesn't work for us. So the challenge is, how can you change the house to work for you without having to completely gut it? So I recognise that, but because I'm a problem solver, I recognise that actually there is a challenging problem here, but it's not obvious. So it is radical in a different sense. And then because of how my business started by doing commercial projects. When I set up my company, I was gifted a commercial client by my previous employer. They were just one client, and then it was like, right, can you survive in the world of business? And thankfully, I can say 4 years later, I'm still going with that. So because of that introduction, I've been able to build up commercial clients. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Very good.
I think Toby.
What software are you using these days? Back in the day, and I'm talking 30, 35 years ago, we were using AutoCAD. Everybody was using AutoCAD. It was new and innovative, but by today's probably very rudimentary.
Well, because I'm a new business and I'm very cost conscious, I'm still using AutoCAD.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of software, but there's a term, horses for courses, and something I've had to learn very quickly as a young business owner is that while I was in practice, I did have the chance to use all the really cool software because I used to do like walkthroughs and 3D visualizations. Once I set up my own business and I saw the cost of that software, I had to recognise that, well, there's got to be another way to deliver these products. And so I'm using software that they were using back when you were talking about. But
It's still going strong.
yeah, but it is, because it's not, when I'm doing an extension, I don't need to be able to have someone put on a VR headset we walk around. Well, they won't want that, so we're watching too much of your house go perfect. But unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. If you were given like a blank check to do your own build, would it be like a cottage, a mansion? Would it be an office building that you can just go and kind of let loose with your ideas?
Yeah, so I think because of my interests and because I recognise craftsmanship, so I really like Georgian properties because the Georgians knew what they were doing. When you look at a Georgian property, especially on the elevation, it's very pleasing to the eye, and people don't realise the reason being is because of the ratio. So the Georgians were very mathematical when it came to construction, and they designed. When you look at a Georgian house, the lower set of windows are really tall, and then as you go up and up, the windows start to shorten. So they understood perspective, and so they were masters at making massive properties look well proportioned. So I would love to buy a Georgian property, like an original though, not a copy, because we are still putting up properties, aren't we? We're still putting up Georgian houses in 2026. And then I would love to convert it, so bring it into 21st century, first century, and sensitively remodel it to fit some of my needs. So then you would actually end up with, you know, when you get to go to a really nice public building like a museum that's in an old building or a church that's been converted. I love a house like that where you've got the old meets the new, where they're really, and that would be expensive because I'd have to get people who still know how to work with timber, sash windows, but with double glazing. It's actually really hard, very expensive. So yeah, that would be my ideal to rework a Georgian property.
Nice.
Yeah.
Joshua, thank you very much.
Very good.